I did things a bit backwards insofar as I watched Frasier and then I watched Cheers. And having now finished Cheers, I am going back again and rewatching Frasier in its entirety. And it's so beautiful. It's just, I feel like if there was any show in the world that was written specifically for me, for my tastes, it would be Frasier. The intellectual humour, the snide remarks, I love it so much. It just really entertains me. But obviously what this show does is actually make fun of Frasier and Niles for being snobs, while also making those characters really likeable and really lovable. And it sounds like that should be impossible, but it's not. And it's so beautiful. I have so many thoughts about Frasier as a whole, and I'm still currently rewatching season 1. I'm trying to savour it this time and just watch a little bit at a time. Whereas when I watched it for the first time, I binge watched it. I couldn't stop. But I thought, while I'm still watching season 1, I will discuss the pilot, the first episode. I don't know if I will discuss every single episode. Maybe I will. But for the moment, I thought I'd just focus on The Good Son, which is our pilot. So, this picks up a little bit after the end of Cheers. And obviously Frasier is now living in Seattle. He's moved from Boston. And he has just found out from his brother Niles that his father, Martin Crane, of course, has taken a fall. He needs to be looked after, and they could put him in a care home, but ultimately Frasier decides to step up because he's being guilt-tripped, let's face it, and allow Martin to live with him. Not really counting on the fact that Martin is going to bring his delightful little terrier, Eddie, who I love. I love Eddie a lot. And obviously from there, problems ensue, character developments happen, and it's an absolute bundle of fun. So while I'm discussing this episode, there will be spoilers for this specific episode. I won't spoil anything that comes after, so if you've just watched the first episode and want to know what somebody else thinks about it, this is fine. If you haven't seen it and want to know if it's worth watching, absolutely. Should you watch this before or after Cheers? I think it's fine to watch it after. There are, in Frasier, in the series, there are cameos from the majority of the Friends cast. In fact, I think the Cheers cast, I've just done a video discussing a Friends episode. I think everybody except Kirstie Alley made a cameo, which is a shame because I love her. So you could watch this first, and it wouldn't spoil anything really, but certainly I also recommend Cheers. So just, to recap, this was created by David Angell, Peter Casey and David Lee, the brains behind a lot of the success of Cheers. They also created Wings, which is brilliant. And Frasier is also in Wings. That's something else that I'll be discussing at some point. Frasier is a character here in the pilot. He feels a little bit different to how he was at the end of Cheers, but his life's in a completely different situation now. I should point out that if you are still currently watching Cheers and you haven't yet seen Frasier, this will spoil some things that happen at the end of Cheers for Frasier. Obviously, he's now divorced from Lilith. I love Lilith. I love Bebe Neuwirth, and it breaks my heart a little bit. At the time when I first watched this episode, I had no emotional attachment to her. But having watched Cheers and then rewatched this episode, I'm very much in love. And it just breaks my heart so much. And that, it means that when I'm watching this for the second time, it's a really different experience having seen Cheers. I like the fact that he's now got his own talk show on radio on KCL, of course. And I think that works really well as him being an on-air psychiatrist. We never really got to see him doing that much work as a psychiatrist in Cheers, because that wouldn't have worked. The setup of the show just wouldn't have allowed for that. We got to see a bit, of course, but this we get to see him working a lot more, and we get to see a lot more of his intelligence, his educational background. This really comes out even at the beginning of the pilot, and straight away we're saying, well, Frasier's even more of an intellectual snob than we realised, but he's still lovable and likeable. We do, of course, get the introduction of Ros Doyle. Ros Doyle, as a character, if you don't know, is actually named after the producer of Wings, and she actually, unfortunately, passed away and the character is named after her. Roz, of course, here played by Peri Gilpin. I'm sure you're well aware, if you've seen Frasier, of the whole Lisa Kudrow being hired as this character and then being not fired. Absolutely not. There are some people, or some, I guess, media news outlets who try and say that she was fired from this role. That's not how it works. In the entertainment industry, you try somebody with a character, it's not their style, it doesn't fit, you move on. And obviously she's gone on to, to a lot of success since then. But personally, I couldn't imagine anybody other than Peri Gilpin playing this role. She's brilliant. We don't get to see that much of her in the pilot, but I feel like we get enough of her to get to know who she is. The main thing, of course, is Daphne. And had I had any idea what Frasier was going to be about before I sat down and watched it, I never would have thought they would have been hiring a physical therapist from Manchester in England. Absolutely not. Usually if you have an English character in an American show, they are, they're RP, or push come to shove, they're Cockney. Never from Manchester. So absolute credit to the show for actually doing that and putting a bit more effort in with their English character. I love how eccentric she is. Daphne Moon is just brilliant. Jane Leeves as an actress, she's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Again, I couldn't see anybody else playing this role. And there are some people who think that her accent was not great, and I will admit that in this first episode, it's fine, but then when you watch the later episodes, you can definitely hear the quality of that accent developing and becoming a lot more realistic and believable. I completely understand that. So I think it's a really great introduction to our main characters, and Martin, of course, is, straight away you can tell that he's going to be quite grumpy, quite blunt and to the point, but instantly he's lovable and likeable. We get to know a little bit about him, working as a cop and what happened, but not so much that we feel like we know absolutely everything there is to know about Martin Crane. So I feel like, we're drip-fed information in this episode and throughout the rest of the series as a whole. And I think it's really well balanced. Eddie, Moose, absolutely brilliant. I love him. Eddie is one of my favourite characters ever. We also get to obviously see Cafe Nervosa for the first time. Really brilliant setting. If you look at it, kind of looks like the same set design, or at least similar blueprint that was used for Central Perk. The year after this was premiered in 1993, Friends, of course, 1994. Very, very similar layout. But of course, I guess there are only so many layouts you can use for a coffee shop in a TV series when you're looking at kind of the three walls of a set. Either way, brilliant episode. We have one of the most iconic moments, maybe not one of the most iconic moments in the show, but certainly one that's talked about a lot, is when Roz tells the story of Lupe Velez. Turns out that story isn't even true, and that breaks my heart. Really great episode, fantastic introduction to the cast and characters. Our guest callers here are Linda Hamilton and Griffin Dunne. I can completely see why this was picked up for a full season, and then obviously recommissioned for many seasons thereafter. I love it. I love Frasier. Niles is brilliant. Niles is Frasier from his first introduction in Cheers. If you watch... Well, actually, I made a comment when I first watched Cheers and saw Frasier, and my first thought was, that's Niles. Frasier in his introduction in Cheers has the mannerisms of Niles, but I guess realistically, Niles in Frasier has mimicked the mannerisms of Frasier when he was introduced in Cheers, and David Hyde Pierce does an amazing job of that. And it's basically like Niles is the version of Frasier who hasn't gone through so many life experiences. Let's face it, after Diane Frasier began to change as an individual and become a lot more world weary, Niles is still in a bubble where everything is money and education and success, at least at this point in the show. I love Niles as well. So, absolutely love it. I'm going to stop talking about this pilot episode, but I will say, if you haven't seen Frasier at all, watch it. also watched Cheers. I enjoyed watching Frasier and then Cheers, and now going back to Frasier. Do I wish I'd done it the other way? No, I don't. I'm enjoying rewatching Frasier. I will probably rewatch Cheers because I love it and it's brilliant. Frasier is perfect. The pilot is perfect.